Hello, and welcome to Spotlight, coming to you from the beautiful sanctuary of Christ Church Cathedral in Vancouver. I'm Trevor Carolan, and I'm joined by Henry Young on guitar and Paul Blaney on bass in this special presentation of road trips in pandemic times. We'll be presenting a number of travel stories, spoken word sketches, and listening to some cool jazz sounds drawn from selections from Road Trips, my new book, published with Mother Tongue here in British Columbia. Before we begin, we'd first like to acknowledge the support and encouragement of the Christ Church Cathedral community and staff for this wonderful space. We'd also like to thank the Canada Council and the Writers' Union of Canada for their sponsorship of the Public Readings program in these difficult times for artists in our country. And before we go any further, we'd like to express our gratitude and acknowledge the Indigenous First Nations peoples on whose traditional ancestral territory we're standing on for this event. Israel Hetsapka. Thanks for joining us. Thank you. They say, write what you love. I've always loved traveling, and when I'm not on the road, I enjoy reading about the travels of others. Travel tales let us shift gears to another place and season, filling our senses with the kind of news that makes life worth living and that makes us want to become part of the story. Travel's a chance to see and learn, to wipe the slate clean and try new things. And a meaningful journey gives us the opportunity to reimagine ourselves and our possibilities, to encounter the sacred and sublime, to be healed and return whole. This first selection is from Morocco. It's called Marrakesh Blues. And I'm mindful here that, Henry, I think when you were touring with Nina Simone's band, you've played Marrakesh, so old times. Marrakesh Blues. Some journeys feel as if they were forever ago. Others stay vivid in mind from when our eyes, our ears, our heart were fully open and alive. I'd been thinking about the Sahara for a while. An opportunity arose for a book I'd done on one of the beats, and I crossed the Atlantic with my wife, Kwang Shik. The Pompidou in Paris was showing a major exhibition. Beat Paris, beat LA, beat art, you name it. The French are invested in the beats. Ginsberg, Corso, and Burroughs, they all hold up to write and live on the cheap at Rue Guit-le-Coeur, close by Notre Dame. Jack Kerouac stayed long enough to crank out a draft of his Satori in Paris. And always there is the occult creativity of Brian Gysin, that odd surrealist painter savant whom Canada has never really claimed for itself. You're coming to Paris for the Ginsberg book. Justine, our painter friend from the Six Aron, said, then why not go to Morocco? I'll tell you where to stay. In Marrakesh, you can stay in dives for chump change or chill out for a little more in the Nouvelle Ville beyond the historic walls. We learn a new word to describe people like ourselves, flashpackers, a spin on the old backpacker lifestyle we followed for decades. The new version wants a little more comfort, a decent room, local digs, a shower, toilet. Peter Main wrote daily at the Café de France just down from Katoubia Mosque, and his book A Year in Marrakesh remains a serviceable guide. Morocco is unexpectedly contemporary. Young women are stylish in leggings, smart sandals, and hijab scarves in striking colors. Others go uncovered. You're not far from Europe after all. The oasis greenery and its bird life is surprisingly rich. You're in North Africa now. The minarets, the call to prayer, Alhamdulillah. On the boulevards, it feels as if you haven't shaved for a couple of days, and always there's a little grit under your nails. This is a place of curious dreams, coffee, clouds of strong tobacco everywhere. We adopt the Dia Monver of Rue Ibn Hamza as our breakfast place. I switch to drinking thé du menthe without rock sugar. The coffee is short and bitter. The Medina is the old Foreign Legion-style city with pockmarked brick walls. We hire a horse-cart taxi, and the cabman relates that the holes are for pigeons and blackbirds. We Marrakeshis love our birds, he chuckles. And I recall that pigeon pie is a specialty here. In the desert, every last thing has a purpose. In the Bled, where the countryside morphs to stony desert, lines of camels amble down hard, baked trails. A few have riding saddles. Gray, fuzzy newborns pronk stiff-legged like wonky gazelles, leaning in at water groves among olive trees, palms, thorny bush. Nearby, men look on in their long jalabas. The chunter of grazing sheep, crickets, and the chunter of desert birds carries on the bone-dry air. A friend sends a letter. I write in reply, Marrakesh is a red city, bustling. Mornings are pleasantly cool. The Jama El Fana is a great public square. It's frantic at night with throngs of milling people, fires blazing around the edges near restaurants and bizarre stalls that sell delicious sheep's head stew. Wild Noosa mountain drummers and hornmen that Brian Gysin claimed are vestigial panpipers from ancient Greece arrive at dusk. When the snake charmers leave, it's still all here. Last night, a blue-black desert man flayed hypnotic trance notes over and over on his two-string goatskin gurmi, with drummers and cymbalists circled around him, same note after plangent note, building wave on wave of repetitive desert sounds in the dark as elderly village men and slick-dressed hipster dudes broke down, dancing uncontrollably. I said, this is wilder than Jimi Hendrix, and flashed that he'd been here too. immersed in the trance, after Brian Jones from the Stones had pointed the way and Crazy Dyson from Edmonton had turned on London to the desert vibration. Crowds gathered round the dancers called out, "Sahar, Sahar." We hire a jeep to take us into the Atlas Mountains south of the city where things turn dry quickly. Ali, our driver, veers off the road and pounds across rugged country. "I will take you where no tourist ever goes," he said, hammering the motor along a terrifying precipice cut above a sheer drop gorge of great height. We're in a mystic landscape, white with fear. Ali relishes our terror. Finally, we emerge from the chasm and surge higher into the Atlas, a massive range of peaks behind us. Days later, we mount camels. The males are bad-tempered beasts with an attitude. You roll along, wobbly with the flow, seated on a hard platform. You're higher than you'd expect and had better not fall. Steadily, the appalling smell of camel seeps into every rag you own. But it's a simple life, the desert. The nomads say in French that they live in paradise. We drive on, heading for the caravan trails across the dunes. Ali takes us out to an oasis hamlet with its herds of sheep, donkeys, tough, quiet shepherds, nomad tents, la lot. I ask in a scrabble of French, "What does Sahar mean in your language?" Ali looks at the endless rolling hills and dunes, laughs with a Berber friend, responds, "Emptiness." He sounds like the Dalai Lama, Kwangshik says. Farther along, we hail on a cluster of black woolen tents stretched wide on wooden poles and ropes, the dwellings of semi-nomadic herders, and you sit on bright, knotted carpets. For a few dirhams, the locals serve thimblefuls of hot mint tea with a little pot of argan honey and torn bits of flatbread. With a local guide, we set off trekking across the undulating dunes. In 15 minutes, we lose track of every landmark but the distant mountains. You can find or lose yourself along the Sahara's edge. No problem. Some things, though, never change. Back in Marrakesh one morning, we say au revoir to the waiters at Diamond Vert, to the grocery boys down Avenue Abdel Karim, who never cheat you. Everyone smiles, a little sad to say goodbye. And only after we return home, watch Lawrence of Arabia, do I realize the Bedouin tents in the film are precisely like those we stayed in beneath the Atlas. Truly, the way is endless. This next selection, Henry and Paul are going to be playing a piece called 2+1, My Friend, from Henry's album, Cooking on Sunday. Thanks, Henry and Paul. We're going to feature a piece now from Lisbon. Portugal is a little unique. It's not exactly on the road to anywhere else. It is the destination. And these days, people call Lisbon the Little Paris. Wonderful town. It's from a selection called Iberian Soul. B.B. King told me once during an interview that he loved playing in Lisbon because people there really understand the blues. He would know. Lisbon is the Little Paris, a friendly town, sea air, great food and wine, soulful fado singers. No town has a sweeter tooth. Walking the shady streets is unforgettable. The Portuguese understand that food is a commodity not to be primped and cooed over. It's a pleasure that's also a necessity, a gift to be savored daily. You enjoy the coolness of an evening and settle in a dish of olives, crunchy bread, a glass or two of wine, fresh sardines, grilled parrotfish, bacala, salt cod and rice, shellfish. It's all here with the chilled green wine, the Vinho Verde. You like to hear some music tonight? The Goanese desk clerk asked. You bet. Go to Alfama, the fado. It comes from that place. We moved on in the night. Alfama, the old Moorish quarter. It's hilly. The cobbled streets intersect Rua Remedios. It's a neighborhood synonymous with saudade, that sense of longing or yearning. Fado is the blues in Portuguese, a birthright of the waterfront poor. They use it to bring on down the soul, not showy or dramatic. It's deeper, more profound, almost a religious expression. Women in black shawls yearn here. Male tenors resonate over the guitars, and suddenly we're in the deep end of love, of nostalgia, with emotive lyrics, melodic figures plucked on the unique Portuguese guitarra. Round and slender, its inescapable North African heritage. There's the music, a long, lazy dinner, chilled wine, coffee later on. Live large, it's worth every penny, and life is short. You haven't lived until the fado women start lamenting their saudade. Trust B.B. King. They know about the blues here. It gets mystical. The way that Son House or Reverend Gary Davis transport themselves beyond sorrow in their Southern Delta blues, using blues to transcend their blues. You exit late, a bit wobbly. People roam the quiet streets, but the trams run late and are cheap as chips. At Fatima, the image of the Holy Mother, Nossa Senhora, is a marvel. In filtered light, her blue-white sculpture by Benedetto Pietrogrande is young, simple. With her left foot stepping forward, she hovers like an apparition. Her left hand points to the ground in the mudra of touching the earth. The right is raised in gracious welcome. Traditional gestures of Guan Yin, the goddess of mercy, of the Buddha throughout East Asia. Her eyes gaze forward, cast down a little, the entire presence motherly, divine, and leaves men and women weeping. Here you bring your imagination, leaving cleansed in a state of grace. Fatima. Pair of brief sketches from a piece in the book called San Francisco, City of the Sacred and Profane. En route to San Francisco, down the coast from Vancouver, the small communities of Bolinas and Stinson Beach have been home to many artists, musicians, and writers for decades. The whole coast here has been a natural incubator for creative living. The late poet Lawrence Ferlinghetti loved it here, and I'm mindful that another poet from Vancouver, Bud Osborne, loved Lawrence's work a good deal, and I'm mindful that Paul Blaney played with Bud Osborne. We called it lineage bearing. I remember walking one morning with Joanne Kiger, the poet, down the lane from her little house to the village paper she edited for decades. She spoke of her approach to writing. You pay attention to the moment, to the detail, she said. Her graying hair like a badge of wisdom. Maybe it's a part of meditative open consciousness like what Ginsberg was talking about. Language and the architecture of liberation, but the body is a vehicle for consciousness too. We stand looking across Bolinas Lagoon at Stinson Beach, where Ken Kesey and the Grateful Dead worked at getting San Francisco's countercultural project off the 60s launchpad. Sir Francis Drake sailed here too during Shakespeare's time. What a nexus! You hear the sea crash on the rocks and can smell the salt tang of the spray in the warp and weft of life, not far from San Francisco, one of the true great Renaissance cities. San Francisco is hip. New York is hip. But Havana's Calle Obispo is the finger-snappingest street on earth. It doesn't get any cooler. Narrow, packed with strolling couples, wild art galleries, boutiques, open-air cafes, one after another with swinging bands, rumba combos, lobsters, chilled Cuban beer, top-quality rum, and revolutionary cigars everywhere. You can have fun all night for $25 here, and there's still a lot of living for free. Viva la revolución! Outside a cafe one Sunday evening, we passed a young man singing, just him and his guitar. Seated on a rattan chair in the street, he looked like a movie star, singing with the voice of an angel that brought a thrill to your heart. A block away, Plaza des Armas, an old black Cubano musician sat in the shadows of a colonial palazzo, dressed in swinging Bona Vista Club threads, sharp white suit, black shirt, two-tone shoes, hipster tie, and a natty Panama brim. playing bluesy trumpet in the night, not worried about who listened, an aging young rebel blowing beneath the stars. We met a Pole who told us about the music that the bands played. That song they're playing, they're singing. Can you understand? He asked, reaching over from his chair. Hasta siempre, comandante. It's for Che Guevara, faithful until the end. Linton Garner, huh?
Linton Garner. Another one.
Right. If you've got a romantic speck in your genome somewhere, then all roads lead to Paris. This is from La France, toujours la France. I've tried to remain faithful to Paris, the city of love. The artists and writers have all been here. Impressionists, post-impressionists, Scott Fitzgerald, Gertrude Stein, Henry Miller, the Beats. In Paris, an education in art and culture unfolds organically. Start with any comfortable cafe terrace, dust off that high school French and plump up your savoir-faire. My own first walkabouts were in the shabby streets of Pigalle, backed up with late-night sessions where Guadalupe's Al Lirvat played tailgate trombone with his swinging band at La Cigale. On its great magic hill, Sacré-Cœur, with its oddly proportioned dome casting an all-seeing gaze from Montmartre across the city. At evening, La Crépuscule, that blue Parisian stretch before the last light fades along the Seine, has been celebrated by poets since Baudelaire. Then the unexpected treasures, that first unforgettable sight of Notre Dame before the fire with its towers and sacred beauty, its tragic legend of the hunchback that children love. Just upriver, La Musée d'Orsay with its impressionist collection across from the Louvre. Degas, Matisse, Van Gogh, Toulouse-Lautrec, sculptures by Rodin, Cézanne's canvases in praise of sunny Provence. We'll read a short poem from In Formless Circumstance. From Paris, this is called Tai Chi by the Seine. Under gray skies, July muggy, where a breeze starts up from the river, you move slowly in a promenade quay. Last night, the city sat together here, talking in warm tones and dancing in the dark, drinking from the bottle in their thousands. This morning you are alone, heron dancing by the river, just a gardener working early, shoveling earth into planter boxes. Downstream, one barge lodges hard to port, ties up while the Massouin chugs past in modern time, hauling sand. Turning softly, turning with the current, the single width Tanpin, you shift, marking the tall poplar, and the world revolves too, as if the trees themselves were dancing. Green city, eternal city. Now a Sorbonne professor escorts his acolyte, still early, and police car klaxons pass like braying donkeys in the Jardin Luxembourg. You can smell the limestone here, ancient when the hunchback was still a boy, where blackhead turns skim above the current sous les ponts de Paris. Step lively now. Regard the spattered arteries of Paris, her jeweled architecture. Turning, dancing, raise hands and play the lute. Heading toward the cathedral, the motor chug of the river barge grunts like music in 3/4 time. Leaving time. Step forward to 7 stars. You can smell the stones again, dusty lime, now that the breeze brings a little rain. At the Pompidou, in a room themed The Doors of Perception, we come upon a series of photographs by Allen Ginsberg, of Kerouac and Burroughs, displays of their books, French and English, film clips of the beats run in sequence, and moving on, you spot a pair of images by Brian Geisen, hauntingly beautiful, from Edmonton. His Chinese inked ideograms, learned as an army translator in Vancouver during the war, blend in black Arab-style calligraphics, studied through long years, tough times in Tangier. Their ochre and golden backgrounds suggest atmospheric, hieroglyphic bliss. Kandinsky meets Wang Wei. We stop at a bar near l'Église Madeleine, cognac, pastis. This is the way Paris is supposed to be. My wife asks, do you think you can truly teach people art? Justine, her painter friend, says, you can learn to cultivate sight, to draw, to sculpt. What you can't learn has to be inside you, the motivation. There are a lot of ways to arrive at keeping the voices inside us alive. It's important to find your own discipline. Working alone means you must always confront the self. So you must find your own self-discipline. It's not so much can you learn art as find your own voice. Then, a last warning. As always, it begins with a glance, the long view from the studio across a squabble of rooftops to Sacré-Cœur, emerging from its shadow with the sunrise. We take coffee, some fruit, leftovers from the night before, and set off calmly with our packs through the great front doors beneath a lifting sky. With a final wave, we pass the waiter at Café de Rafael, and he waves back. Then we clatter down the street toward the metro at Austerlitz. Called Grooving in Nepal's Higher Heights. We came trucking into Kathmandu once after months on the Dharma Trail. It's an ancient crossroads city for the world. In a courtyard beneath thin wisps of cloud, an unlikely Swiss cafe offered good bread and coffee, an outpost of familiarity. We wanted to see the mountains. The owner's tribal wife told us of a village 30 miles north renowned for its vistas, Nagarkot. A country bus led us upward through mud-spattered villages, grinding through the hills to a ridge dotted with stone huts. Above a sweeping gorge, we rattled to a halt. Down a winding trail, a rustic lodge came into view. We gave it a look, smoky, dark, and settled in, layering ourselves in extra clothes for a fitful sleep on unforgiving rope cots. A cold night. With the sun not yet risen, we hiked up the ridge wrapped in scarves and wool mitts, the cold knifing in at our shoulders. Cresting the ridge which rose sharply, we crossed rough, stony ground, picking our way in the pre-dawn light through wiry conifers, fir, spruce. The rising sun brought a vision of the tallest peaks on earth directly before us, still many days' trek in the distance. Look, on the horizon, Langtang, the first great peak, 23,000 feet, backlit with hazy morning fire, it began to glow. We huddled together, gazing at the sight, teeth chattering as the sun rose, growing in strength, illuminating successive peaks. One by one, they came into view. Gauri Shankar, Purbi Gyachu, Lakpa Dorje, Ganesh Himal, Himmelchuli, the mightiest summits on earth, 18,000 to 25,000 feet above the level of the sea, white and gleaming, spanning the edge of the world. We were hoping for a glimpse of Sagarmatha, Chomolungma, Everest. A cluster of peaks to the east was hazy in the dust from the plains below. The mountains hovered midpoint in the distance above a whorl of golden light, miraculous. We were alone above the world with what looked like heaven all around us. And in the chill, I began the hot, slow dance of the heron and the snake. Over the firs, Quangshik came softly and shifting together, one with the other, like sun and moon. We played our Tai Chi. We were, the mountains were completely present. The Chi tingling through our limbs like a Buddha smile. Sun at our backs, we headed down the hills, and a Gurkha farmer and his young son greeted us warmly. Namaskar! With hand signs and pidgin lingo, we explained our destination. Walking with them, forgot any hardships. The land began to sing in our hearts. For 2 hours we followed their lead through fragrant juniper, reflecting on the transience of this unknown world, with the holy peaks arcing high around us, the mystery of it all. They took leave with happy, sad farewells as we forayed across a wide, shallow creek. From a banked-up levee above a puzzle of rice fields, we saw Bhaktapur was not far off, its narrow lanes offering the traveler rest. Classical. This is entitled, Why Are We Always in Tears? From a section in Road Trips. Dzień dobry means aloha. It's in homage to an old filmmaker friend and to Ryszard Kapuscinski, the great Polish foreign correspondent. For years, we tried to locate a friend we'd met in the Himalayas. He'd led a Polish film crew. They were hard up, the most broke foreigners we ever met, selling the clothes off their backs and their equipment to fund each next stage of their unlikely odyssey. Now, leaving for Warsaw, a note comes out the blue. Darek, your film pal, is here. At last, we meet again in the city's bohemian student district, and it's like we've never skipped a beat. We've all aged a little, a few wrinkles. And your documentary, I ask? There never was any money in film, Darek shrugs. The footage got ruined in a flood, but life is better now. Quangshik looks out the window. It's snowing, she says. In April? Yes. Then Darek appears. We're off to the cemetery. We'll remember an old friend, Kapuscinski, storyteller extraordinaire. In a Granta interview, Ryszard spoke of the forest of things as I've seen it, living and traveling. In his reports always came suggestions of dark situations, They were dangerous times in the Soviet bloc. He survived by being the best. Nobody wrote like him. We wander among gravestones, this cemetery of heroes. I carry his last letter. Taoism is profound, he wrote, a wise and sound philosophy, always a source of joy. We find his marker engraved with a globe of the world. No mud, no lotus. He knew trouble makes good stories and understood how the moral and the corrupt coexist uneasily. This was his style, a reportage rubbed with literary license, what Tom Wolfe calls a larger truth than is possible through mere compilation of verifiable facts. Adieu, mon ami. Darek leads us over the Vistula. It's edgier across the river. Grotty shopfronts, Turkish delis, galleries, and bars. It's the cheap side of town beginning to gentrify. Already, alas, it's sayonara time again. We've only just met after so many years. We'll never see him again. In Warsaw, why are we always in tears? And to conclude this evening's performance, a short piece here now. We're off to Southeast Asia. We know there's a whole generation undergoing its walkabout, its generational walkabout in Southeast Asia. Been going there for many, many decades. My wife Kwang Shik and I were there just before the pandemic broke out, about 14, 15 months ago. It's a wonderful country. You have to imagine about 6.5 million people in a large, wild, green, mountainous, hilly, small former kingdom that's the size of the British Isles. 6 million people. It's called Along the Mekong. In poor countries, you see faith up close. Laos still feels like a village and moves slowly. Gardens overgrow with perfumed frangipani. The monks pass by in orange robes. In Luang Prabang, the old capital, there's a gladdening mix. Dharma temples, old colonial hotels above the Mekong and Nam Khan rivers. I think of dusk at a cafe when the light is fading and mist settles over the sleepy dragon peaks. The Mekong flows in a lazy green bend, and the shoreline temples are a huddle of papaya and banana. evening chants echo from a nearby temple as we gaze at the water, at lantern boats setting out for night fishing. It's the loveliest spot on earth, but I've said that before. I tell my wife. She smiles. We muse on the joys and knocks of travel. We've released fish in the river, an act of atonement among Buddhists here. We've much to be thankful for and sins in need of forgiveness. In this quiet bliss at the end of day, beneath a dimming sky, life is like a dream, a peaceful world. It came to me then, a good death must be like this. So the joys and bumps of travel, the crazy music of what happens, there's nothing like seeing things full in the face. As Sung Dynasty poet Su Dong Po declares, the sound of the valley stream is itself the vast, eternal tongue. The world is better on the road, meeting all kinds of people. We don't encounter many bad actors. Perhaps we're getting older, but there's a fellowship along the camino of life. May every sincere traveler receive the 4 sublime gifts: longevity, good health, great happiness, and wisdom. May you count the wise to be the wealthy, and may your travels be blessed. From Christ Church Cathedral in Vancouver, for road trips in pandemic times, I'm Trevor Carolan with Henry Young on guitar, Paul Blaney on bass. Thank you all for joining us. Happy trails. Well, we did it. We did it.